Uh, Last night I had watched Beau is Afraid, movie directed by Ari Aster, also written by him as well. And so as I was watching it, I believe it was somewhere towards like the middle of the movie, uh, it kind of dawned on me that what I was watching probably wasn't what was really happening in the movie. And so my brain just started thinking about all these different things though that was going on in it. And so I just thought I would come over here and just give you some of my theories about what was going on in the movie. And to start it off, I'm probably just going to do like a recap of kind of like the first half of the movie. And then I'm going to go into like some of my thoughts about some of the things that was going on. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, then I would definitely say go and check it out. Um, Otherwise, though, you might want to click off of this so that you don't get any spoilers. So I'm going to spoil everything about the first half of this movie. So, like I said, last night I was watching Beau's Afraid, but see, my mind was fixated on some of the imagery that was happening on it. And at first glance, it seems like it's just one of those fantastical movies where you don't really see exactly what's happening, and I think that's what's going on in the movie. So let's go out. Let's start it off. See, it starts off like when we first meet Beau, like he's in his therapist's office. You know, he's asked a question about visiting his mother. Uh, but Beau he begins to like trail off and go against, and go off of it and starts talking about some of the other things. But the therapist, he quickly brings Beau back to the subject that he first talked about. Um, and and after some back and forth in it, a word is written down. And that word was guilty, which struck me as kind of odd, that a therapist would write just guilty on his notepad, and as well as just continuously bring Beau back to the main subject that he was talking about. Because normally therapists will let you rail on and just talk about some of the things though that's going on in the person's life. But at the end of the session, Beau's given a new prescription, but there's a heavy emphasis on taking the pills with water. So in the next scene, it begins with Beau fumbling with the pill bottle. So I can't remember if he actually like took a pill or not. So don't hold me to that. Uh, but this is where things, start to get strange. As we're introduced to the world that Beau lives in. It's filled with violence and chaos. And after purchasing a miniature statue of a woman holding a child, like Beau runs towards his apartment while being chased by one of the seemingly crazy denizens of his chaotic world that he lives in. So Beau narrowly makes it safely into his rundown apartment building. But once he's inside of his apartment, it's clean, it's tidy, and it's a safe space. But at some point uh, during this scene, his TV's on, but there's a news report about a naked man that was running around and he was stabbing people. Okay? So I think that plays a really, really important part in my theory about what's going on. But as the day grows on, night falls, and Bowie tries to go to sleep, but he's wide awake because he's receiving notes about the noise. But in Bo's apartment, it's completely silent. There's no noise going on, but it's his neighbors that's creating all the noise, or so we think. And then finally, when Bo gets to sleep, he wakes up really late in the afternoon. You find out that he's almost missing his flight to go and visit his mother. So Bo he quickly scrambles, brush his teeth, and head out the door. But as he's locking the door, he forgets something. And so he runs back in, leaves his luggage, and leaves the key in the door. Once he retrieves his item, he heads back to his door. But then his keys and his luggage, have gone. Like they just mysteriously vanished. So from there, he calls his mother and he's explaining the situation to her because he doesn't want to leave his safe space unattended. Um, and then as he's talking to his mother, she starts berating him and starts accusing him of actually doing it on purpose, to avoid visiting his mother. And we find out that Beau is afraid of his mother, and so in his stress, he takes two of his prescription pills. But when he goes to actually like drink some water, there's no water in his building. And so he begins to panic because he remembers the therapist's words that you're supposed to take it with water. And so as he's panicking, he's got no keys, so he props open the door that leads into his apartment building. So he dashes across the street, and there's all this chaos that's going on around there, and he heads inside of a convenience store, guzzles a bottle of water, and then from there, he attempts to pay the cashier, and the cashier's telling him that he's going to call the cops. He hands him his card at first, and then it's declined. And then Beau starts to pay with cash. And as he's fumbling in his wallet, he's looking behind him, and the door that was propped open, he notices that all of the crazy chaos that's happening outside is heading into his apartment building. So Beau, he gets as much change as he can, throws it on the counter, runs across the street so that he can try to get into the apartment building, but it's too late because they've already kicked the prop on the door. They kicked it away. The door closes on him, right? Then from there, Beau's trying to figure out a way to get in, and so he goes upstairs or he climbs up a fire escape, and he can see inside of his apartment. Now, how did all those people know where Beau stayed at? I don't know. But as the chaos is going on inside of his apartment, he's safe actually outside in the crazy world. So he falls asleep, and when he wakes up, he heads towards his apartment, but then he sees a dead person at his door. But the dead person is clutching his phone. So when he grabs his phone, he calls his mother, and he's shocked to find out that his mother is dead. So after a while, Beau's distraught, and so he decides that he's going to take a bath. And once he's in a bath, he notices like a terrified man that's hanging from the ceiling, right? So the guy is unable to maintain his grip, and he falls on Beau, right? While he's in the bathtub, Beau's naked, and so then like they start struggling. And so we're unsure like if the guy in the bathtub is actually dead or not. But Beau's naked, and he runs out of his building, but he's clutching that miniature statue that he had purchased earlier, right? So then Beau he approaches a police officer, and that police officer mistakes him for the naked man that's been going around stabbing people. So he tells Beau to freeze, but of course, like Beau's afraid, and he decides that he's going to run away. He's going to flee. So the cop fires off a shot, and once Beau is in the middle of the streets, he gets struck by a truck. And for me, I think this is where the movie kind of started to make sense to me, right? And that's where I came to the realization that Beau is probably schizophrenic and he's off his meds, right? So that's pretty much what this theory is about. And what we're seeing is an altered version of his reality that's stacked on top of the actual events that's happening. And so what I think that's actually going on is that Beau is actually the naked man that was stabbing people. And we're getting like a recap of the events that led to him actually stabbing people. And what we're actually seeing is just a fantasy inside of Beau's mind as he's going through a trial. And so, uh, in the next scene, he meets a woman named Grace, and Grace is played by Amy Ryan, who I believe is his defense attorney. Okay, and the reason why I think she's his defense attorney is because there's a scene where he's inside of her house, and she's handing him a cup of water, but the water underneath is a note, and the note says to stop incriminating himself. You know, and then as we're thinking about it, we don't really know what was going on in the young adult life of Beau, but I think that the character Grace was explaining to us exactly what happened to Beau in his younger life. So you see, I think Beau was an actual soldier, and the events that she was describing about him being in war and how he was shooting at all the dead bodies, even his comrades, I think that was Beau. I think he had actually like flipped out. And then the character Jeeves, that's played by Dennis Menochet, I think that's just like uh, the embodiment that Beau has though when he was a soldier. Okay, so there's another scene though where he's trying to go and get to his mother's house so that he can visit her, but there's a girl that stays with Grace, and um, she puts him in the car, and she gives him drugs. Just has him smoke some pot, or forces him to. But what I think that's happening in actual reality is that the mental hospital that he is at, because he was hit by a car, I think they doped him up, and so as as he's drugged up, he's actually in the courtroom, and they're doing a recap of his past life, or I'm sorry, not his past life, but his past as a child. And so Beau has always had mental issues, mental health issues. Okay, and there's a scene though where he's flashing back and he's thinking that he was on a boat and he meets a girl, but that I believe that boat was just a metaphor for the mental institution that he was in. Okay, and then once he comes back to, believe he's back in the hospital, and then he admits he admits to uh, killing the girl, Tony, I believe that was her name. He admits to killing her, and then from there, uh, that's where his defense like falls apart. So his insanity defense kind of like falls apart because now he's admitting to things. So Beau he escapes. Um, so Beau he escapes and he runs away and he goes into this little fantasy area where he's just recapping the things though that he wished his life could have been at. All of this is happening, in my opinion, while he's on trial. And so, towards the end of the movie, uh, towards the end of the movie, we get a segment with Beau and his mother, which is played by Patty Lupone, and I believe that she's the judge that's proceeding over the murder trial. And then once again, we see Stephen Henderson, who was his therapist, but now that I think about it, I don't think that was his therapist. I think that may have been a prosecuting attorney, possibly. And so um, when we see him, we hear him playing what I believe is Beau's confessions to the murders that he actually committed. Yeah, okay. So I hope you guys are like following me so far with this. And then So there's all these different like metaphors that's going on. And so once he's going inside of that house, once he's inside of his mother's house, I believe that's him realizing that he's actually inside of the courtroom and he's actually going through his sentencing. And so once again, he escapes from there and he gets on the boat and he takes the boat, but suddenly the boat like stalls and he's unable to move. Like he can't jump out of the boat and he can't move. He can't get away from anything. And so then we see a character called Dr. Cohen, played by Richard Kind, and he's giving what sounds to me like a closing argument, right? And it's it's his way of actually proving that Beau is aware of his actions, you know, which I believe is followed by his subsequent execution, which is why he couldn't escape, which is why like the boat turned over because at that time Beau was actually like executed. And so I left out some details of the movie, but the general overview or my theory behind it is that what we're actually watching is events that's being interpreted by a person who has schizophrenia and has augmented reality or escaping from reality so that he doesn't have to deal with the actual events that that happen or that caused. But there are things though that happens inside of the movie though that tells us what I believe that what we're seeing isn't what's really going on. And so that's it right there. That's my theory. My theory is that the whole movie is just Beau being on trial for the murders that he committed, and that's it.